Welcome back to Sales Remastered. My name is Daniel, and I'm going to cover different techniques on how to sell over the phone. So I get asked often from not only my sales agents, but also different parties throughout the consumer networks that I'm in, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram. And one of the most common questions that I get is, can you put a video out on how to sell over the phone? And I myself, I've been selling over the phone for over 20 years now. My first job was a sales marketing position, which I was considered customer service, but nonetheless, you had the ability to cross-sell over the phone. And as I grew throughout my career, I did find a few things rather helpful that I've always constantly used with regards to selling over the phone. And of course, it's evolved, but nonetheless, the content of the message or the intention all still remains the same. And so what my tip to you is, how do you sell over the phone? It's actually broken down in three different categories, right? So you have first the initiation of the actual sales conversation, and then you have the framing, which is basically mounting up for the pitch, and that's the third phase. So you have initiating the conversation, also known as prospecting, and then you have framing the call, which is mounting up and making sure you have the right pieces for your sales pitch, which you're going to conduct. And then the third portion, of course, is the actual sales pitch. And I do strongly recommend that if you are selling over the phone, that you don't do the prospecting, framing, and pitching on one single call. And I'll cover that in a little bit more in another video. But I'm going to give you the three sales tips on how to effectively complete each. Okay. So number one is with regards to prospecting, especially how it applies today. Everything in a consumer's world, right? Your prospect's world, even our world. We have so many different media outlets, whether it's the TV, social media, internet, kids, spouse. There are just so many things that are fighting for our prospects' attention. And one of the common things or objections that we get that prohibits us from completing that sales prospecting is the common objection of not having enough time. And I did a piece on this on one of my Instagram posts about understanding and adapting to your consumer's mindset. And that's one of the main objections, but you have to pay attention to the objections and when in the sequence, whether it's phase 1, 2, or 3, that you get that certain objection, because it's all about how you're scripted, how your script works throughout, and it has to be fluid through the process so that you're able to combat those objections before they even happen. And so therefore you're able to remain control in the call. But in the very first portion, which is prospecting or starting the initial sales conversation, whether it's an inbound or outbound, the main objective is to communicate that you appreciate their time. And so for example, if you're getting transferred to inbound lead or inbound inquiry from, let's say, a customer service department, number one is usually you're conferenced in. So they're saying, hey, I have Daniel, he's one of our best sales agents, he's going to help you from here. And that's a customer service agent saying that. And it's always helpful to understand that your first impression means everything. And so thank that customer service agent for transferring, so they have a sense that you're in the same organization or under the same roof. But when you take over the conversation, or when you make that initial intro, you want to set the precedent, set the tone. And so one of my favorite opening pitches, or one of my favorite ways to open a prospecting call, is saying, hey, my name is Daniel. The reason why you're talking to me is because I'm authorized to provide you with the information that you need. But before I begin, I want to make sure I'm helping you save some time. So I'm just going to ask you some real basic questions first. And if I can move forward with the call, I can go ahead and provide you some benefit and show you what I can do. But if I can't improve your situation, then I can help you save some time. And then move right into the pitch. So that's my opening line, at least in that context. The wording may be different depending on the prospect's engagement, their tone, the mood, because you have to be able to get your script down to where it's almost on autopilot. And autopilot because you're listening to cues. You're listening to not only their tone, but you're also listening to the background, trying to get an idea of the surrounding that they're in. Because sometimes you might, hear prospects, whether they're at a grocery store, or they may be in the middle of doing something, or they could be on a construction site. I've spoken to prospects in all situations, and I'm coherent to that because it's important on the prospect hearing me. And if they can't hear me, then I can't have a conversation with them. And so again, the phase one in initiating the prospecting call is just number one is display your authority, confirm that you're the person that they need to talk to. Number two is acknowledge that their time is important by telling them you're going to help them save time. And then number three, let them know that you can help them. So they have to feel this right away. When they initially call your company and it has nothing to do with you, they're always going to have a guard. They're going to be prepared to tell you no, or to give you every objection that a consumer feels is the right thing to do. And that's okay. We have to understand it's not their fault. They don't really mean anything bad by you. They have to protect themselves, and it's human nature to protect what they care about, which actually moves on to the next piece of the conversation, which is framing. Framing the conversation or the sales call for the second pitch has a lot to do with three components, and these three components are adaptable to any sales situation. So whatever product, whatever service you sell, the common term for it is hot buttons. And so you need to find where their hot buttons are. Hot buttons are like the pain or the need or the desire, basically the outcome or the results that your prospect is looking for. And the only way you can actually find that and fine tune your pitch, which is the third phase, is that you really have to understand what makes your consumer tick. And so, of course, this is going to range. This is going to be different based on what product or service you sell. But the underlying message here is that you're trying to find out where their emotions are tied to, what really pokes them or makes them tick. And so, what I've followed are three components that if you understand what these three components are, you'll be able to properly frame your call for the pitch, which is phase three. And so those three things are love, fear, and self-preservation, also known as survival or maintenance. And so again, love is, of course, it could be anything from family to their house, their way of life, anything, hobbies. It just depends on how your product or your services apply. My services happen to be financial services, so I'm talking about emotional ties to cash flow, to extra money for expenditures, to afford outing or hobbies or recreational activities with their family. But I'm not saying it like that. I'm applying it to them. The second portion is fear. Fear applies to anything. I mean, you could be selling, baby products. You could be selling financial services. You could be selling a vehicle. But there's something that you can attach towards fear, whether it's fear of safety, fear of loss, fear of rejection. It applies somehow, some way. You just got to get creative and think about it. And then the final piece is self-preservation. Self-preservation also referring to like survival or maintenance of their accustomed lifestyle. And so it's human nature to fear change, and you have to get creative and figure out how your product is not going to change their life. It's going to improve their life. And so consumers are fearful of change. And so in two ways. Number one is they're fearful of change by going to a new service provider, which would be you trying to sell your product or your service to the consumer. But also they're fearful of change because maybe their service provider is not providing quality work or quality customer service. And so they have fear of, number one, losing any benefit that they might be missing out on, or they might have fear that their service provider, their fees are too high and it's obstructing their way of life, their maintenance. And so that's number three, maintenance and survival. Or self-preservation. It's really all about being able to maintain the lifestyle and the custom that they're accustomed to. And so when you understand those three components, you'll have a better job on selling over the phone, because it's really all about, a lot of sales agents, they go right into the sale, and so they don't understand the three components.